Get used to the mask. The governor signaled today that he's going to extend his mask mandate another 30 days. The way that this is working, with the governor dictating so many aspects of life in the name of saving lives, it's a system that's not designed to be in place forever. Yet it's been 6 months since Democratic Governor Jared Polis' first pandemic-related executive order. I can't even tell you how many unilateral mandates he's issued since then, but our politics guy, Marshall Zellinger, counted them up.
Now, as I said yesterday, there's only so much that any government can do. The most important person who can help stop the spread of the virus is you.
That was March 11th, 6 months ago today. Let's go back to that first part.
There's only so much that any government can do.
On that day, Governor Jared Polis issued the first of 177 executive orders related to the COVID-19 response. Executive orders expire after 30 days, so the 177 number is misleading. There are about 40 original executive orders. The majority of the rest extend the order another 30 days or extend and make a slight addition or subtraction. Using the 177 overall number, 34 deal with health care, like when the governor ceased all elective and non-essential surgeries, and then issued a new executive order saying they can start up again under certain conditions. 5 of the healthcare orders deal with the construction and operation of alternative care sites, like the Colorado Convention Center. 19 of the executive orders address conducting elections during a public health emergency. 13 extended or suspended certain tax deadlines. 8 of the executive orders are about education or child care, like when the state suspended in-person learning last school year and also increased access to emergency child care for essential workers. 7 are socially minded, about alcohol or marijuana sales, allowing to-go alcohol and curbside marijuana delivery. And 6 of them, soon to be 7 after this weekend, mandate masks. First, it was for essential workers. Since July, everyone.